Hello everybody. I am by no means a ZModeler expert, but I thought I'd share with you some of the things I've discovered or found out along the way. ZBrush labels things in such a way that sometimes I think it means something else. For instance, stitch. I thought it meant you could have an open mesh or two meshes that you could stitch together, but turns out that's not really how it works. What was really frustrating for me at first was, I think, caused by the fact that any stroke or click on the mesh can have a possibility of three different actions because there's either the point, the edge, or the polygon. So sometimes you will be clicking on the mesh or making a stroke and it doesn't seem like anything happens because you're watching for what you think is going to happen, and meanwhile you might have affected something else and you're not even seeing, or at least I think that's what caused a few of my problems. I wasn't seeing what was happening and I thought that it just wasn't responding, so I just went on clicking or stroking again. Meanwhile, things are building up and pretty soon I've got a mess and didn't know how I got there. For instance, if you have a very small polygon you're trying to affect and you can't get the polygon to be selected because it wants to select a line on either edge or points or whatever. If this ever happens to you, then let me introduce you to your new friend, the do nothing feature. Sounds like a shirt I used to have that said, I'm a pro at procrastinating. The first cool tool of the ZModeler arsenal that I wanted to show you is Stitch, but we're going to first hover over polygon, spacebar, and do nothing. Now I know that this seems like a lot to go through, but it really isn't when it makes things simpler. And with do nothing on, if you're like working on polygons, you turn off the edge and the point with the do nothing action. Then when you hit a line, instead of it usually will pick the polygon, so it actually makes things go faster in the long run. It seems like a lot to go through initially, but the more you use it, the more these things get easier and easier, and the more you learn the different functions, you'll know which function to go to do a certain thing. And as time goes by, it just gets faster and faster, and soon not be able to live without it, I'm afraid. So let me set the point to stitch. I don't know if you've noticed, but depending on what action you choose, the modifiers and targets can change along with them. So as you pick different things, the different targets and different modifiers happen. The stitch has three modifiers. The targets are 2 points. You have to endpoint, to midpoint, and to start point. So I'm going to use endpoint. What this means is that the first point is going to go to the end point, the second point that you pick. And in this case, I'm going to choose this one. And it goes there. This one to here, and here to here. Okay, so now I want to join these 2 points, but I don't want points to end up on this side or that side. I want them in the middle, so go to midpoint, and voila. Very handy tool. It's my favorite new tool. Now, it also is very good for cleaning up geometry. Or let's say this little tiny polygon here, for instance. So it's a simple matter of stitching them together. And it'll also do some big changes, like, let's say, things can get out of control really fast, but you can get some really amazing results. That is the stitch action. I haven't played with stitch edge yet. I think it has to do with closing holes, but I haven't played with that one yet. Another handy action on the polygon menu is insert point. Let's say you have something you want to find the exact center of. I mean, I'm going to click down in the corner of this polygon, but it just picked the center for me right there. Very handy action. This mask is also great because you can be very precise. You just want to mask this polygon. How cool is that? But you can also set it to mask, let's see, polygroup island. Okay, so let's say you want to mask that area. Some of these have taken me a while. I don't understand everything yet that's on here. Transpose. This is another really very handy. And once again, I'm going to pick on the polygroup island. Yep, it's still set. So click, and there's the transpose tool. And all you do is do whatever you were going to. Everything else is masked out. You have to go back to draw, of course. And don't forget to clear mask. Okay, scale is pretty handy. And this is going to be for the polygroup island. Okay, so I have it set for polygroup island, so it's just affecting the polygroup island. Oh yeah, another thing about scale. The modifiers include mesh center, click center, I have it set at polygon center, axis center, local symmetry. Have different results depending on where it's set at. I don't know if that's going to cause any difference. Some of these might not matter at all because of where well, this one does. See, I'm not quite sure what they mean by an island. I just know it works for me. This here, it's set for polygroup island, so it looks like it is only affecting this ring. Maybe this is the island and this is the polygroup because it's set to polygroup island. So if I set it to island, it affects everything. So that's all one island. In the documentation, it says that an island is when you have two different subtools that you combine, then each subtool is going to be an island. But this isn't any combined subtools. It started with a geodesic ellipsoid egg. And it's subdivided with the Deuce-Abian method, which is different than the Catmull-Clark. So, let's see, let's set this back to QMesh. And I've got it set to Polyloop. So I might as well show you how Polyloop works. And if you can see, the orange indicator is pointing this direction. So the Polyloop goes this way. Sometimes it's really hard to predict which way it's going to go. For instance, I don't know if you can see the orange line or not, but it's pointing towards us. You kind of see where it looks like it goes all the way around. Show this again. Ah, yes, up into the rest of it. Okay. So if I did it pointing to the right, oops, I don't think I did. Yeah, it's going around the middle of that, kind of. I encourage you to experiment with all of these different targets, because I think you might be amazed at what can happen. I've got it pointed that direction. In this instance, it's pointing in this direction. So I don't know if it's going to affect it differently. Oh yeah, nice. And then that's Polyloop. While we're talking about polygroups, there is a really cool feature that comes in very handy. Let me switch this to single poly. Okay, let's say I'm affecting this, and I don't like that polygroup. It's going to pick the same polygroup as the last time, unless I think there's a button you can push or a setting you can push that will change it each time. I haven't lifted my pen yet. Hit Alt, and you can change the polygroup until it comes up how you want it. I'm pretty sure that even if it matches this here, it's still a different polygroup, because you can click on this and see it only pick that. Oh yeah, I've got polygroup. I'm going to do all polygons, and this is set to 6 sides, which means that, I click on a polygon, all the polygons are going to be regrouped, and depending on which side they're facing, that's the color that's going to be. So there should be 6 colors here. I don't know if there really is. So all the ones facing a certain direction are the 6 axes, or the 6 directions of x, y, and z, negative x, negative y, negative z. Let me turn double on down here. Display properties. Oh yeah, also, like right now I have slice curve. Even if you have the control shift set to one of these tools, you just lift off of control and hit control again, and you're back into selection mode, which is very handy. You don't have to be changing your tool. Okay, I want to back to where I was. Okay. Trying to remember all the things I was going to talk about. Okay, I'll bring up a different model. This model I know has a lot of problems, and I've kind of figured out some of them. Now, if I go into dynamic subdivision, oh, it's going to be fixed today? You're kidding me. I'm going to pause and be right back. Okay, I found a version of this model that has the problems I was thinking that last one had. If you see here, there are holes in the mesh. I think what's causing it is flip normals don't weld to geometry that's flipped the other way. I'm not quite sure. It's a good thing for Paul to answer. So I turned double off. A lot of it has flip normals here. Where these holes are, you can see that there's actually overlapping geometry, as you can see through the mesh here, but then on the other side it's solid. So we'll try about polygroup island. Just want to show you a couple different ways of selection. Control-Shift-X will grow, Control-Shift-S will shrink, and Control-Shift-A will grow all. So it picked everything that's part of the same contiguous mesh. One way to know if there's anything beyond out there is hit frame, and then if there's still something out in the nether regions, it won't focus this close. It'll show the whole mesh in frame. So that's one little shortcut for figuring out if you have any other geometry that you can't see. Okay, rather than go through this whole thing and bore you to death, I'm just going to skip to the part where I was going to fix, or attempt to fix. Let's set edge to insert. I found that the Alt key, while it's in insert mode, works better than if I had it in delete. For some reason, setting it to delete, it just doesn't want to delete edges. But in insert mode, edge, and hit Alt and click on it, it deletes them. Notice that once in a while, the new ZBrush, it will refuse to do things that it normally does, and you have to like restart the computer, or the next time you start the program, it'll be fine. The geometry menu in tool, down here, mesh integrity, and then it says check mesh and fix mesh. Like right now, if I hit check mesh, it'll tell me stuff like mesh contains 3 edges that are shared by more than 2 polygons. Sometimes you'll get a message like that when you're trying to go into dynamic subdivision. If you ever get the message that says this, what you do is you hit fix mesh. Mesh integrity test completed is what it says. It doesn't tell you it's fixed. It just tells you that the test is completed. The same thing as if you click the mesh integrity button. It says it's completed. So if it just says that after clicking either one of these buttons, it means that the mesh is fine. But I mean, if you get that first message from clicking this or from trying to go into dynamic subdivision, then all you do is hit fix mesh. And there have been times where I had to do that every single time, like if I went out of subdivision mode and then wanted to go back in. But then later on, when I was going to show that to somebody, I brought the model into ZBrush, and there was absolutely no problem. So I have no idea what that means. Okay. First, let me set this to do nothing. That was the polygon mode. Click on this edge, and then, oops, rotate. And I was going to a far distant edge. I want this edge right here to this edge. There. Sometimes the angle of which you're facing the edge, if you rotate it to an angle like this, for some reason it's easier to choose. Oops. There we go. And this even works for weird shaped holes. There's still a hole here. There we go. And go into dynamic subdivision. Looks like it's welded and everything. There we go. Awesome. So I forgot to talk about one thing that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to go down into the initialize palette. I'm going to set X to 4, tab 4, tab 4, return, and cylinder in the Y position. Now, B, Z, M for ZModeler Brush. Now, pick split and have it on point. Click and drag out, about yay big. Click. Now, go into polygon mode, inset, and I'm going to set it to inset region, but first I'll show you what inset each poly does. Oh, and I'm going to set it to polygroup all, since this is all its own. So that's what you get if you have the setting set to, oops, wrong one. Inset each poly. I want to inset region, which will, I'll show you. Undo this. That's what I want. Go back into poly mode. And this is edge. Set poly mode to delete. Make sure it's polygroup all. There we go. Now we're going to go into edge mode and select bridge. 2 holes, which opens up a whole lot of extra modifiers. I'm going to set it to circle. I think that's what I want, and pivot on clicked edge. And I'm going to also change polygon to do nothing, just for safety's sake. Save myself a headache. Okay, so click on one edge, click on another, pull out to the right, and it pulls it out. Go down, increases the edge loops. Oh, try that over. 1, 2, something like that. No! There, I like that. So that's using bridge to bridge 2 holes. Well, I hope I didn't bore you, and I hope that you were able to glean some kind of information that you could use. And take care, and I'll see you in class.